Okay, my good friends, this is going to be a deep dive for deep minds. So if you're not interested in reality and the totality of our existence, go play your video games. Have you ever heard of Hermes Trismegistus? He could be one of the children of God, basically. There's a lot to discuss here, but let's just talk about what he said, and basically all of them said, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. Hermes Trismegistus. Let's talk about that, what that means. But before we do, I want my buddy here, Caesar's been reading some principles of meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and one of the most important things he said is there are no random actions. No random actions. None that are not based on underlying principles. Underlying principle. What are the underlying principles? As above, so below. Let's dig. Okay, North Africa discovered this in 2015. A giant fish right there. All right, you see that? That's a giant fish. That's his tail. These are the scales. That's the fin. This is a dragon, runs all the way across North Africa, attacking him. These are the legs, which are the thighs of this dragon. Let's look at that dragon in detail. All right, all of this is run off blood. That's all effluent running off of this dead, decaying dragon. This is his head. That's his nose, his red flaring eye. Okay, and all coming down the side is that flashy stuff you see on the dragons in the parades. And this is all of this here is runoff of a dead, decaying body, black and red blood. Here is his throat, right down here is where he was slashed. Ancient texts talk exactly about this. Zeus cut his throat, and this was Typhon. And that's where all the red blood ran out. And whenever you see real green stuff, you know you had red blood. And that's green in the desert. I mean, you know, coming out of a dragon's scales. That's his blood. Now, running all the way down. This is the throat. It runs all the way down here. It's unbroken until it gets cut here. There's a couple other slashes here and there that weren't quite as devastating, but they were cuts. And his throat runs right down into his stomach, and then you start to have all your digestive system stuff going on down in here. That's digestive organs and breathing and so forth. Now, he runs all the way across North Africa, and the fluty tail ends up being way over here, but just to show you here is some of the bloody stuff running off, the body effluents again, and these are the scales that are the dragon scales. Very, very similar. You see, these are all different types of metals and stuff. They're very, very interesting. All right, and they're also obviously dragon scales on the other end, on his throat. And this it's an avian creature, has a cloaca. If you follow this down, and the people are living right in where the poop comes out, right there, because its poop is very productive as far as growing. You see it? This is what's called a cloaca. So these are avian creatures, and this is all it's like fertilizer. And this poops right out there. That's the poop flap. Okay, and now coming all the way down here is his throat, and here is all the dragon scales. Now, if you think this is silly, and you think you can't see what I'm showing you, well then, all I can say is good luck. All right, or stay tuned. You know, don't dismiss. Don't get upset about things. Become curious. Don't become furious. I have that. That's what I have. I have people become really, really upset when I say this was all real stuff. And I'm telling you, as below, so above, and so below, so on the sideways and inside out and everything else. It's all the same 100% biology. Now, are we a cell? We could be. Because I'm going to tell you something right now. Earth is going to end up going under. I mean, it's just going to happen. And I don't think it's got a long time to go. There's something called apoptosis in cells. That's programmed cell death. They only last so long. And that was what the prophecies are. This is going to happen, this is going to happen, and all this stuff is bad in between because some bad guys came over and took over, which is viruses. I don't know. I have no idea. But when I see this kind of stuff, and you see these legs? These legs right there are virtually the thighs of a human. Let me show you something that was written by Apollodorus. All right, this is Ovid and Metamorphosis. He starts right off the first sentence, basically. He says, I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities. Accompanying this theme is often violence inflicted upon a victim whose transformation becomes part of the natural landscape. Hills, mountains, valleys, rivers, constellations. Okay, like I said, this is as deep as it gets. These were the ancient texts and the ancient myths, they called them. Now, this is from Apollodorus, from his library, about 150 BC, and this relates to the fish and the dragon in Morocco. The dragon was Typhon. Listen to what it says about Typhon. Remember, his thighs look just like the thighs of a human. When the gods had overcome the giants, Earth, still more enraged, had intercourse with Tartarus and brought forth Typhon. They keep talking about these things as living beings and creatures, and the dragon was Typhon. It was a hybrid between man and beast. In size and strength, it surpassed all the offspring of Earth. Listen to this. As far as the thighs, he was of human shape, and of such prodigious bulk that he outtopped all the mountains, and his head often brushed the stars, which it easily would. His thighs, why would they point that out? As far as the thighs, he was of human shape. Specifically pointed that out. One of his hands reached out to the west and the other to the east. From them projected 100 dragons' heads and so forth. Now, from the thighs downward, he had huge coils of vipers, which were these entangled things. And this talks all about Typhon and throwing rocks and fighting with Zeus. And then Zeus pelted him. Listen, Zeus suddenly from heaven, riding in a chariot of winged horses, pelted Typhon with thunderbolts, pursued him to the mountains, where the fates beguiled the fugitive, for he tasted of the ephemeral fruits in the persuasion that he would be strengthened thereby. Anyway, let me go on with this. Being again pursued by, came to Thrace, and in fighting at Mount Hermes, he heaved whole mountains. But when these recoiled on him through the force of the thunderbolts, a stream of blood gushed out on the mountain. And they say that from the circumstances, that mountain was called Hermes. And when he started to flee through the Sicilian Sea, Zeus cast Mount Etna in Sicily upon him. That is a huge mountain from which down to this day they say blast fire issued from the thunderbolts that were thrown. Well, I think that Typhon is laying in the desert. Now, how that happened, I don't know. Because this was written by Apollodorus. This is 150 BC. He's a lot closer to the source. But I can see the dragon. Okay, this is, once again, this is Typhon's coils that are way out on the edge. This whole area, you see this whole area? This is his skin. From all this whole thing right here, this whole thing running down from him are these coils. That whole entire thing. You see his legs? The legs are like the thighs of a human. Exactly what it said. And then coming down here, these turn into these coils. And these go this way too. These are the same things going this way. Now, there's some of them go over the fish. Like that goes right over the back of the fish. That's just not runoff. These are from his thighs, from his big... He said it ran right across Africa. That's it right there. His head would be up in way past, it would be in outer space. His head would have scrubbed the stars. This thing, I think, is 1,600 kilometers, it's 1,100 miles long, something like that. Standing up, let's say he was even 400 miles tall, standing up. All right, from here to here, say that's 400, 800, I don't know. Let's say he was 400 miles standing up. How high is the space station? All right, the space station is only 254 miles up. From Apollodorus' description, and from what we can see, him standing up, the thighs would have been stable. Whoops. Let's go over here now. The thighs would have been however tall that is, but from here down, he would be walking on these coils, let's say, because even in the ancient pottery, I'll show you that in a second. But if you could measure from here up to here, let's say, his head standing up, I mean, it would be absolutely, even if he was laying flat standing up, just from here to the top of his back, it's as high as the space station right there. He'd knock the space station right out of space. Just standing there. Okay, you know that I claim that the ancient Greek texts were more or less accurate. All right, not every one of them was specifically correct, but they talked about the myths that, here they're talking about Greek gods, gold, and gibberish. Well, was it gibberish? Was it true? I say it was true. I have found the evidence to support these statements they made by the ancient Greeks. And the term hermetically sealed derives from the name of the Greek god Hermes, who conducted souls into the afterlife. This appears to be the case. And like I said, we're going to get deep. Very, very deep. When the Greeks learned that the Egyptians had a god Thoth, or Tehuti, who specialized in wisdom and learning, they named him Hermes Trismegistus, or thrice greatest Hermes. Supposedly Hermes Trismegistus was the scribe of the gods who authored the sacred Hermetic works that described the material world, as well as the quest for spiritual perfection. The material world. That's what I'm into the material world. That's it. That's where I go. So I'm working in the same realm as Hermes. All right. And it leads to a quest for the spiritual perfection. If you look and see the things that I have shown, and the creatures that existed, and the stories that were told in the myths, and put all the pieces together, it looks to me like we are as above, so below. We are nothing more than a little tiny piece of biology. All right? Think about where does every cell come from that develops in your body. It has to be torn from another body part. It has to be assembled somehow. Is it torn from a body part, or is it just put together in pieces? But every cell is constructed one way or the other. It's either pinched away from another cell and develops, or somebody puts it pieces together. There is a lot to think about here. But anyway, Hermes was also into the chemistry big time. All right, this is just what the alchemists were interested in. So they latched onto Hermes Trismegistus as their patron. The alchemists often used distillation in their attempts to change matter from one form to another. A process required making a glass tube which would be airtight. The method they used was attributed to their legendary patron Hermes Trismegistus, hence the description hermetically sealed. Now, could Hermes have been Jesus Christ? Some people say possibly. I don't know. At this point, everything is up for grabs. I do have a specific belief, and it supports Jesus Christ as being the guy that can get you onto the other side of this life that we're at now. Because we're only here for a very brief time compared to eternity. I mean, this is just like a blink of an eye. So, if he is the one who conducted souls into the afterlife, I'd follow that guy. Okay, this is from the Chemical Institute of Canada, and it's about the Greek gods, gold, and gibberish. Now this is chem-fusion, chemical confusion. All right, September 2013, they made this about Hermes. Now, listen to this. I'm just going to read it to you and discuss it as we go along. The term hermetically sealed derives from the name of the Greek god Hermes, who conducted souls into the afterlife. Let's remember this. Hermes was a Greek god, and he conducted souls into the afterlife. All right, so that's pretty hot stuff. Okay, my friends, I'm going to make this as simple as I can. There was a Greek god called Hermes Trismegistus. Now, this is from the Chemical Institute of Canada, and they're sort of putting this all together about the Greek gods, alchemists, the emerald tablets, gold, and gibberish. Now, it's not gibberish in my mind. Now, this is back to September 2013, Chem Fusion. Now, the term hermetically sealed, don't forget this guy's name was Hermes, derives from the name of the Greek god Hermes, who conducted souls into the afterlife. That is a very important job. When the Greeks learned that the Egyptians had a god Thoth, or Tehuti, who specialized in wisdom and learning, they named him Hermes Trismegistus, which is this hermetically sealed, where that comes from, or thrice greatest Hermes. Apparently he keeps coming back to Earth. Anyway, supposedly Hermes Trismegistus was the scribe of the gods who authored the sacred Hermetic works that described the material world. He was a material scientist, as well as the quest for spiritual perfection. How do you get to the good place? Now, this is just what the alchemists were interested in, so they latched onto Hermes as their patron. The alchemists often used distillation in their attempts to change matter from one form to another, and that works. All right? All it is, well, anyway, I go on about, I do chemistry, a little chemistry, and all particles is bigger and bigger balls of tiny particles. So Hermes was right on this track there too, as far as I'm concerned. Now, so the alchemists used this, required a glass tube to make it airtight. The method they used was attributed to the legendary patron Hermes, hence the description hermetically sealed, when you seal the glass tubes. Now, hermetic seals are airtight seals to prevent the passage of gases or liquids. Airplanes in flight are hermetically sealed to prevent air from escaping. The International Space Station is hermetically sealed, and astronauts on spacewalks are similarly protected. The food industry relies on hermetically sealed packaging to exclude air that can lead to deterioration. Now the air has the oxygen. That's the interesting part. Hermetic seals are used in electronic equipment to keep out moisture, as well as for archiving historical documents such as the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all of that stuff. Well, why? Why is it keeps out the oxygen? The oxygen is the reactive species. All right, anyway, now in some versions of the legend, Hermes was not a god, but an ancient Egyptian alchemist who had taken his name from Hermes and was buried in a chamber in the Great Pyramid of Giza. Some of the powerful secrets of alchemy were supposedly found inscribed on the emerald tablet found clutched in the hands of his mummy. Hermes, apparently. This tablet was thought to be the key for transmuting base materials to precious metals and gems. Its translator was the 6th century alchemist Jabir ibn Hayyan, from whose name of the term gibberish is derived, reflecting the confusing writings of the alchemists. It is confusing. There's a lot to it. Alchemists believed in transmutation, or the conversion of certain substances to gold. It's always about making gold. Now, Jabir himself was convinced that yellow sulfur and silver mercury would combine to form gold. He carried out many such experiments, like other alchemists recorded his results in special codes so nobody could take his intellectual property. Anyone reading his writings would see them as gibberish, but Jabir gave us more than gibberish. In his attempts to make gold, he mastered the technique of sublimation and distillation, and learned to prepare many simple chemicals. Sublimation, you see that? My son is, he's a librarian, and he works with special little tiny equipment. He told me last week they got in a new printer or something called I think it's a sublimation printer. I'll have to look into that. Anyway, all of this stuff is technical. He was a material scientist. But they ran against. He also argued that alchemy should be taught at universities. This ran against the teachings of the church, which maintained that alchemy was sinful because its practitioners sought the divine power of creation. But Jabir argued that if humans had the wisdom to create new substances, it was because God had given them the ability to do so. Isn't it something? Now listen to this. Newton, wait till you hear this. This blew me away. As far as the Emerald Tablet goes, an English translation was provided by Newton, Isaac Newton. There's more to come about Newton, who was infatuated with alchemy and possibly had mercury poisoning from attempting to produce gold. It's always the gold. Newton wrote that which is below is like which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to do the miracles of one only thing, and as all things have been and arose from one by the meditation of one, which is God's thought, so all things have their birth from this one thing by adaptation. It's all a process. It wasn't accidental. It's a process of a thought manifesting itself into substance. All right, we're going to look at some other writings by Ovid in a second. It isn't hard. Okay, let's get back to this here. Let's go back to here. Newton wrote, that which is below is like that which is above. Which is as above is below, below is above. And that which is above is like that which is below. No difference. To do the miracles of one only thing, as all things have been and arose from one by the meditation of one. I say everything is from the meditation of one, which was biological. It all came from a biological organism and manifested itself into biology that could build on itself. All things have their birth from this one thing by adaptation. That's what Newton wrote. There's more to come, like I said. It isn't hard to see why alchemical writings are regarded as gibberish. Newton's possible mercury poisoning is supported by the high levels of mercury and lead in hair samples kept at Trinity College, Cambridge. Hopefully it is hermetically sealed to keep it from deteriorating. I think that's a joke. Now, where do you see what Newton had to say about the end times? All right, here's Newton. About the time of the end, a body of men will be raised up who will turn their attention to the prophecies and insist on their literal interpretation in the midst of much clamor and opposition. Sir Isaac Newton. Now this is by testeverything.net, 119 Ministries. Now, I look to the ancient myths and the Greeks, and I showed you, or will show you, about the dragon in the desert who is Typhon, which was spoke about clearly, and Christ said that the God of this earth is Satan, who was the original rebellious angels that came down and ruled earth. And I believe, it looks like Christ came back to say, look, you guys are in trouble here. I'm going to show you how to get out of this, follow my way of peace and love, and this war and hate and killing and everything, which is right up to today. I mean, it's just absolutely unbelievable, the amount of brutal violence on the face of earth. It's absolutely stunning to think about. That is a loving God, loving world. It's just that runs contrary to the things that I would think a loving God would support. Now, this gets real hard to talk about because all right, there's Isaac Newton. About the time of the end, a body of men will raise up with their attentions to the prophecies and insist on their literal interpretations in the midst of much clamor and opposition. Sir Isaac Newton, testeverything.net, 119 Ministries. All right, listen to this now. This is kind of important here. This guy Jabir also argued that alchemy should be taught at universities. I have no problem with chemistry. This ran against the teachings of the church, which maintained that alchemy was sinful because its practitioners sought the divine power of creation. That's what's happening now. They're trying to make synthetic creatures, and they think they just did make one that has a heartbeat and everything else, synthetically made it from I don't know what. But that is about as that I go along with. That is against nature. Jabir argued that if humans had the wisdom to create new substances, it was because God had given them the ability to do so. Yes, substances, yes, but there is always obligations to go along with what is given to you. All right, you cannot have free will and have unlimited, do anything you want. You just go kill people, take everything they had, and who cares? Why would you care? You have free will to do it. Nothing's going to happen to you. There's no obligations. No, there's obligations allow God to allow free will. Otherwise, we'd all be doing exactly what he says. Today I do this, and the end of the day I do it. No. You do what you want under the conditions that you observe the obligations of free will. That's the key. That's what we're missing today. All right, we're going to leave it off for now, but we're going to get real deep, because it is deep. This is eternity as far as I'm concerned. These things to me now are at least worth investigating on a very deep level. Now, this is Hermes Trismegistus again. As above, so below. As within, so without. As the universe, so the soul. I believe that we're nothing more than just another little layer of biology, a smaller layer, another cell level. Listen to this. This guy's good. If then you do not make yourself equal to God, you cannot apprehend God, for like is known by like. You have to think along the lines of being what God is. Leap clear of all that is corporeal, and make yourself grown to a like expanse with the greatness which is beyond all measure. Rise above all time and become eternal. Then you will apprehend God. Think that for you to nothing is impossible. Deem that you too are immortal, and there you are able to grasp all things in your thought, to know every craft and science. Find your home in the haunts of every living creature. Make yourself higher than all heights and lower than all depths. Bring together in yourself all opposites of quality, heat and cold, dryness and fluidity. Think that you are everything at once, on land, at sea, and in heaven. Think that you are not yet begotten, that you are in the womb, that you are young, that you are old, that you have died, you are in the world beyond the grave. Grasp in your thought all of this at once. All times and places, all substances, all qualities and magnitudes together. Then you can apprehend God. All right? But if you shut up your soul in your body and abase yourself and say, I know nothing, I can do nothing, I am afraid of earth and sea, I cannot mount to the heavens, I know not what I was, nor what I shall be, then what you have you do with God? Nothing. You have nothing to do with God. If you say, oh, I can't see, I don't want to know anything, and that's what I've heard for years and years. All right, I'm going to leave it at this. As I say, we could very well possibly be just like a bacteria or a virus or a cell living inside of a giant universe of other cells that do the same things. They live for a while, then they have what they call apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. And that would allow for the prophecies to come true. They say in 6,000 years or whatever it is, 7,000 years, everything's going to burn up. Well, if it's programmed to do that, and we're part of biology, because you're inside your body right now, you know, every cell in your body is all programmed to die. It's already it knows what it's going to do. It's going to live for a certain amount of time, and unless something invades and kills it and explodes it, like some invading virus, it's programmed to last, let's say, a year. And a year later, it starts to decay. And guess what happens? Its own body turns against itself. Your body turns against that cell. So you have to have bacteria that would kill that cell anytime it wants. But the cell says, I won't allow myself to be killed until my time's up. When a prophecy says it's time for you to go, come in, kill me, and I'll start over. My components will turn into new components. And that's what they say happened. Body parts turn into new solar systems. Tendons turn into moons. I mean, I can't account for this, but all I can say is it's time to look back at it and see, because it talks very specifically about guiding souls into the afterlife. And I want to go to where the good side is, because that side there is not the side you want to go on, is it? Maybe. And I don't even know yet. I don't know which side is where. I don't know who gets you where. Do you? Jesus Christ said the God of this earth is Satan. I didn't say that. Jesus did. All right, this is Jesus, not me. 2 Corinthians 4:4. Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe, which basically is higher education. They're unable to see the glorious light of the good news. They don't understand this message about the glory of Christ, who is the exact likeness of God. So it seems like we look like God. Christ looked like a human being. Now, was he actually the Son of God, or was he just a man? I can't claim either of those things. But I do know that he had information that I have to attribute to what I would consider the Son of God. Okay, I have found that the leader of this world is academia. And 2 Peter 2:3 says, deliverance from false prophets. Many will follow in their depravity, and because of them the way of truth will be defamed. In their greed, these false teachers will exploit you with deceptive words. The long-standing verdict against them remains in force, and destruction does not sleep. For if God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but cast them deep into hell, placing them in chains of darkness to be held for judgment. In other words, it doesn't sound good for teachers that are false teachers, that are teaching you stuff that they know is not true. And it's based against the Lord God and Jesus. And as far as I can determine, there is a God Almighty that started everything. I can't think of any other way of doing it. I mean, at that point, it gets lost. I got to be honest with you. Obviously, nobody can start from the beginning. But all I can tell you is that once a life starts, all of the cells in it are torn from other bits and pieces of bodily tissue. Basically, they're molecules in chemistry and so forth, but they have to have some programming right from the beginning, and it just didn't happen. They're just not bumping into each other and creating life. Some little piece of something else broke off and said, all right, go on your own and go over and create a kidney or do whatever you're going to do. So we got some serious thinking to do. And that gives you the ability to program that thing to say, all right, you're going to have 120 years, or you're going to have 50 years. And that's what he says. My word won't abide with man. I'll give them 120 years if they can make it, if they can stay healthy, do enough exercises, and, other than that, yeah, you die earlier than that. That's the way it's going to work. And that's exactly how your cells in your body work. No difference whatsoever. And it appears to me now exactly how the earth will come to an end. Very, very similar. It's basically self-destructs at the end, and I think that is looking like it could be, not too far out in the future. But if you find your way, you're going to go in one way or the other. So don't let that part concern you at this moment. To me, it doesn't. Because it's going to be a time of turmoil, no question whatsoever. And this is all written about, too. It's going to be very, very difficult. And you can see this for some people right now. It's horrifying. Horrifying. Beyond horrifying. Starvation and wars and all of this turmoil, fires and floods. And, we're not in good shape. So think about what the next place you want to find yourself to be, and start examining what was written about it. That's all you can do. I'm showing you things that they exist. They're not figments of my imagination. They support the things that were written. The things that were written, if they were true, and the things that were written about the bad things that can happen to you are true, you damn well better start paying attention.